All right, I am here with Josh Peck. And Josh Peck, you have quite a list of accomplishments. I was going over this before I got on here with you. I'm like, geez, I hope I can remember all this. You've done so much. But first and foremost, Josh is with us on Science Sealed and Delivered. I'm Jamie Hope, and we're going to be talking about some really crazy stuff today that's really awesome. I can't wait. But just to give a background on Josh, Josh is a father of four, correct? With your
Correct.
wonderful Christina Peck. She's wonderful. I love her. And then you have your own YouTube channel, Daily Renegade, which has a lot of cool stuff on there, and we'll make sure we get that up. So everybody check that out. You are also the host of a show on Skywatch TV called Into the Multiverse and co-host of Chalk Talk, correct?
Correct.
And then you have been on the History Channel. You were on a show called In Search of Among Others. You are also a co-author and an author. So you authored Unraveling the Multiverse. You're co-author of The Day the Earth Stands Still, The Second Coming of the New Age, Abaddon Ascending, and the book we're going to talk about today, Afterlife, you co-authored with Donna Howell and Allie Anderson Henson. And this book was number one new release in the science and religion section of Amazon, correct?
Yep.
Okay, that was about a 10-minute intro.
Well, I appreciate it. I demand anybody that interviews me at least give me a 10-minute intro. Otherwise, I have no interest.
Right, I'm sure you just seem like totally that type of guy, right?
Yeah.
All right. So today we're talking about the afterlife, and I took notes because it's thick and it's chock full of really interesting stuff. So I wanted to go through and pull out some points and go over some chapters and sections. But the first thing I wanted to talk about that was really cool, I had never heard, and I love this kind of history and evidence and research. But you put in there was a study about, it was in the mid 1900s, about 6 patients that were weighed before they died and after they died. Tell us what was the results of that.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting story, and actually one of my co-authors wrote about this, but I do have it in my notes. So while I'm talking, I'll look that up. But this was something that a lot of people had questions about. A lot of people were wondering about, because there's stories out there saying that this was absolutely true. There are stories that say that. Or I should say interpretations of it that say, this thing is true, but it was really it was unethical. It was an unethical thing. And then there are other people that say that this whole thing was totally false, totally bunked, that it wasn't a real thing, and it could have been several things. So
It
I
was like
believe, yeah. Sorry?
patients, correct? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, on my end, you cut out a little bit.
Yeah, my too. I said there were 6 patients that were weighed, and they found something interesting when they were weighed before death and after death.
Yeah,
Where,
there was a discrepancy in the actual weight, and so the thought was, well, this is the weight of the soul. This is the soul leaving the body. There was actually, and I have it here, there was a story from the New York Times actually about it. Soul has weight, physician thinks. So Dr. McDougall of Haverhill told about the experiments of death, and that's what he was looking for. The headline, the actual story, it's short. I can just breeze through it.
sure.
But it says this came from March 10th of what year was this? 1900, I think,
Okay.
or somewhere around there.
Sure.
But it says that the human soul has a definite weight, which can be determined when it passes from the body, is the belief of Dr. Duncan McDougall, a reputable physician of Haverhill. He is at the head of a research society which for 6 years has been experimenting in this field. With him, he says, have been associated 4 other physicians. So and then I'll just kind of
Sure.
breeze through. But his object was to learn if the departure of the soul from the body was if there could be any manifestation that could be recorded, such as any physical manifestations, such as a weight change. So the method was to place a dying patient in bed on one like platform of a pair of scales. and then that were actually made for this experiment, and then to balance this weight by placing an equal weight on the opposite platform, and then those scales they were able to create them delicately enough to be sensitive to a weight of less than 1/10 of an ounce. Now, in every case,
Wow.
so they're really precise, especially for back then. In every case after death, the platform opposite of the one in which they laid the subject of the test, it fell suddenly, McDougall said. The figures on the dial index indicated that there was a diminishment of weight, and there's direct quotes in this article or in this article that was written at the time too from the other physicians and stuff, and it seems to be pretty corroborated. But because there's so much controversy around it, Allie Anderson Henson, one of the authors of the book, she went right into this story and looked at it from all angles. And the difficult thing about it, because it was such a long time ago, and it's difficult to ever really know for sure what happened. And so she talked about that in the book and looked at it from both sides. So there is evidence that would suggest some of this was fraudulent, and then there's also evidence to say that some of this was legitimate. So it's one of those things that if they never repeat the experiment, then we would never really know for sure in this case.
That's what I'm wondering. I wonder why they haven't. I mean, in this day and age, especially with the technology we have now, it would be so cool. They should do that again. I mean, is there something, is it unethical to do that now, or what? Is there a reason?
Yeah, according to the medical establishment, they say it's unethical, but I don't see how they could say something like that is unethical, yet removing somebody's breathing tube is totally fine. Like there are times when a family member like really sticks to it and says, no, I don't care how much money it costs. I don't care. You're saying they're a vegetable and they're never going to come out of it. We're going to keep them alive as long as possible. There are times, if you wait long enough, that person comes out of it. That person survives. I mean, if that only happened once, that should be enough to tell us maybe we shouldn't expect to pull the plug. So to these doctors, to the medical establishment, it's totally ethical to pull. It's even compassionate to pull the plug when you don't really know if they're going to survive or not. But something like this, where
weighing them,
all it's doing is weighing them. It's not endangering their lives. The patient has to agree with it, so it's not.
Just gonna say, if they say I give you, like right now, I'll tell you that I give anybody permission to weigh me. Just don't give them my before weight.
Right.
Just tell the difference, not what I actually weigh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're really, but their decisions about what's ethical and what's not aren't really based on anything. They're more based on consensus than anything. We as Christians, we base it on the Bible usually. That's where we get our ethics and morality and stuff. But like scientific pursuits, they don't have that. So they kind of make it up as they go along, and because of that, then you get weird things like this. Weighing a person as they die is unethical, but any number of, like abortion is just totally fine. You can dismember.
And let's not talk about the other experiments that they've done that we're just now finding about. I mean, we know that they experiment and they have, so whatever. So that, I thought that was like a really interesting study. But then that goes, if we do have a soul and if we do have a spirit, then that goes into the afterlife. And so the next thing that you guys really broached in your book was near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences, which are NDEs and OBEs. So those you have some really awesome documented stories in there. And you said, I believe you said that you had an experience too, right?
Yeah, I had an out-of-body experience. I actually had several of them, but there was only one that I believe was actually of God, because I used to be in New Age, and so I would astral project, and I can get into what all that means. But
really,
yeah,
and you were able to actually do that.
Yeah, and I don't recommend it to anybody that's watching. I don't. It was a really big mistake, and I almost ruined my life over it.
Wow.
But there's a difference. So there's a difference between OBEs, which is out of body experience, and NDEs, or near death. A near death experience is an out of body experience, but not every out of body experience is necessarily a near death. So anytime that a person's consciousness or soul or whatever you want to call it, their
Mhm.
mind is outside of their body for any reason, that's an out-of-body experience. Now, near death is a subset of that category of out-of-body.
Mhm.
Near death is when it's caused by something traumatic that would normally or that brings a person close to death. So a car accident or somebody almost drowns or something like that. So like what I went through wasn't near death. The
Mhm.
my new age kind of OBEs, they were self-induced, which is a terrible
Mhm.
idea. Actually, every time that I did that, I should have known it, but I wanted to ignore it at the time. I was inviting evil spirits into my life because every time you do that, you're willingly going into a world that you're there are rules in
Mhm.
play. You're not really supposed to
Yes.
go there
Right.
on your own. There
Would
are
you akin
specific.
it? Would you akin it to like the Ouija board?
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
another version of
Mhm.
like entering that world that you don't
Yes.
have permission to be in. It's like
Mhm.
if a criminal breaks into your house, you have every right to shoot him dead.
Mhm.
They kind of have something like that over there too, where but it's not
Mhm.
shooting you dead. I mean,
Mhm.
there have been stories of people that have died from stuff like that,
Sure.
instead, a lot of times these spirits they can use you better if you're alive because they can deceive you and make you deceive other people. I mean, why only ruin one life when you can ruin hundreds or even thousands of lives? So
Through
yeah,
you, yeah.
and
I actually play, and just for people, I'm sorry, I just
no,
wanted to
you're
give
okay.
this caveat for people who are like rolling their eyes about this. Okay, so in high school, my friend had a Ouija board, middle school, high school, and I would go to her house, and I'm sorry that thing works. If you have three people with their fingers on a planchette, and then you can't move it the way it moves, like you could feel if there was someone was pulling it or pushing it, it would be kind of jerky. But when you put your fingers barely on it and the thing is moving, and we did that, so then, oof, like my brother, I made my own at home because there's my mom, there's no way she would have allowed that. So we made our own until my mom came and found us playing with it when she got home from work one day. And that was the end. Thank goodness she found us because I don't know how long we would have played with it, but that thing was gone quick. So, but I had to renounce that and it was scary. We did have like one time a bottle tipped over and rolled off a table, and there's no way it could have done that, where it was sitting. So I would akin that. I would say people who are doing this, like, just don't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that actually brings up a good point because somebody could hear that and say, "Well, Josh, how could you say that that's, evil spirits? How is knocking over a bottle deceiving anybody? That's not really hurting anybody." It's because that's where it starts. That's
Mhm.
where they hook you in. It's sort of like the drug dealer who gives the first hit away for free because they know they're creating a customer. They do the same thing, but they don't deal in drugs. They deal in manipulation and deception and sin and lies. And they throughout time they can start with something small like that. Make a person feel like that they have power. Make a person feel like they can summon these things. They'll let people believe that because then they can use that against them. Because the same thing happened to me. I believed that I had all these basically superpowers and
Oh wow.
yeah, and so like I thought that and really what it does is it feeds your ego. So you start thinking that you're special, you're set apart. No one really understands you. This is how these spirits will isolate you without you knowing you're being isolated. It's like a child predator. They'll isolate. They'll find
Wow.
ways, or like an abusive husband even will isolate a wife or something where she
Hmm.
over the period of time she realizes she can't hang out with any of her friends or anything, and even sometimes believes that she doesn't want to. They'll isolate people, and these people, it's like they have Stockholm syndrome because they don't realize that these spirits are really their captors. They actually like these spirits. They like these things that have them in this control because they don't realize that they
Hmm.
are in control. It's so
What hap-
deceptive.
what happened when you stopped? Was there anything? Were you able to just make it stop, or were they angry that you
Oh, there
stopped?
there was huge blowback. I mean, literally all hell broke loose. So the way that it happened, I was raised a Christian, and but it was one of these more kind of fundamental traditional, like they like Christian churches. They stripped out the supernatural from the Bible. So And I,
Behavior. Was it behavior, like more like behavior modification, the do's and
yeah,
don'ts of your faith? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was really focused on that, and I always had a craving for supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
And but in my church, I just kind of learned to not really talk about it because I would be treated almost as if there was something wrong with me for
Mm.
even thinking that. Like, why isn't Jesus enough? That kind of stuff. It's like, well, he is
Mm.
enough, but I want to know. I just
Right.
want to know, and
Curious mind.
yeah, and because of that curiosity, and it wasn't being satisfied in the church, the enemy used that curiosity for their own benefit. So, over time, I became isolated because I didn't feel like I could talk to my family about some of the spiritual things that I was seeing. I would have sleep paralysis at night. I would see shadow beings, and weird stuff like that all throughout my childhood. I also found out later on in life that my mom was messing around with a Ouija board around that time when I was a kid. So that
Wow.
opened up some stuff. But so that probably played into all this too.
Mm.
But I became more and more isolated from the church. I ended up just stopped going to church because there wasn't really any. For me, I didn't see any benefit. I wasn't learning anything. And then I found out about New Age stuff. And here was a group of people that they were listening to me. They were accepting me. They weren't making fun of me. Nobody thought I was crazy. Nobody laughed. And nobody told me that I just shouldn't ask these questions. They were really encouraging about asking questions and stuff. To me, I thought I found the community that I belonged to. And I fell right in with them. And, I didn't know I wouldn't even say that they were the ones that were deceiving me. I was going into a community of deceived people, of people who
Mm-hmm.
were held in slavery to demons without knowing it. A lot of these people, they're prisoners of war, and they're prisoners of a war that they don't even know exists. And
Wow.
so I became one of those voluntarily. I offered myself up to, the enemy without really realizing
Mm-hmm.
what I was doing. So I got into astral projection and stuff, and after months of messing around with specific types of meditation and stuff like that, I was able to make it work. And I've always kind of been science minded, so I had to make sure that it was actually happening and that it wasn't just a trick of my mind, or it wasn't, even though it didn't feel like a dream, just because it didn't feel like a dream, that wasn't enough for me. I wanted real hard
Mm-hmm.
proof evidence. So there were times that I would I would go into places that I wouldn't have been able to hear anything from. Like there was one time I had never met, or I had never been to my I had a little one bedroom apartment. I'd never been to my neighbor's house. The only thing I knew about him, he was this old guy. He was probably about 70 at the time. And in the middle of the afternoon, I would have my TV on, and he would come over and tell me to turn it down. It's the only thing I knew about him. And I was thinking, okay, it's 1 p.m. on a Saturday. Why? And my TV was on the other wall. It wasn't even on his wall.
Oh,
But
jeez.
yeah, so he would do that. That was the only thing I knew about him. So if I was going to imagine what his apartment looked like, I had an idea of what I thought it might look like. Like if my mind was going to create an image,
Mm.
or create the scenario of me going into his apartment to look around and see what's in there, I expected it to be like any other kind of old person's apartment. I figured it'd
Sure.
probably be relatively clean, and I had a specific image in mind. So one night, middle of the night, I left my body, went through this sounds nuts, but went through the wall, and just to look in the living room to just see what it was, because my thought was, all right, if there's, I'm going to see what it looks like, and then tomorrow I'm going to go over there. I'm going to act like I lost some mail or something and see if he has it, just so I can get a look in his apartment. So I went in there, looked around. The place was a disaster. I mean, there was like kids' cereals like knocked over all over the floor. I mean, it looked like
Wow.
a 17-year-old lived there or something. I mean, it was a disaster. And as far as I knew, he lived alone. But it was not at all what I expected. The place was just a
Mm.
wreck. It was like it looked more like my apartment than anybody's. but so I came back. I was only there like 30 seconds or so, and then I came back, and so the next day I went over there, and because I'm thinking, okay, this is definitely a dream. Like, there's no way his apartment looks like this. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, all of these astral projection things, there's some other kind of trick of the mind or something. Then, they
Mm-hmm.
gotta be. And I was a little disappointed about that, but I've always been. I want to know the truth, whatever it is.
Sure.
I don't
Yep.
want to live in a fantasy. So,
Mm-hmm.
but just so I knew for sure, I went over there, knocked on his door, and he kind of opened the door and had it cracked open. And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Hey, sorry to bother you. I was actually expecting some bills that never came, and I'm wondering, since we're neighbors, I'm wondering if they sent it to your place. Did you happen to pick up any of my mail?" And he's like, "Oh, hang on a second." And so he opened the door. He didn't invite me in, but he opened the door while he went
Mm-hmm.
to go look through his mail. And it was open enough where I could kind of get a look inside. It was exactly what I saw the night before. It was
Wow.
spilled over, the big mess, and as far as I know, he lived by himself.
So you were
And
probably really excited about that, and it
yeah,
probably encouraged you to keep doing it more then.
it made me addicted to it because now
Mm-hmm.
now I knew it was real, and
Mm-hmm.
it made me totally addicted to it.
Like,
And now,
hey, I can go like, spy on people probably and all that kind of stuff too, huh?
yeah, that I was afraid to do because all the books that I was reading said that I mean, it's almost like witchcraft. It's like, well, it is witchcraft, but they would frame it like that. They said if you try to use it for nefarious purposes, like
Mm-hmm.
spying on people or something, you'll bring all this bad stuff on yourself, and you won't.
Uh-huh.
It'll be harder. Like, it'll be harder to do it. So for
Gotcha.
me, I was like, all right, it's already hard enough for me to do this, so I'm not gonna use it to spy on anybody. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
fly around and do
Right.
whatever. And but there were some times where it was horrifying.
Did
There
you
was
ever see anything demonic when you were doing it?
one time there because for the longest time I didn't see any other spirit beings out there, like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The scariest moment that I had before. Well, this moment wasn't really scary. It was just the aftermath of it. But before I actually saw spirit people, but the scariest moment that I ever had with it, I left my body, opened my eyes, and I was all of a sudden it was like I was in the middle of outer space somewhere, but it was totally just a vacuous void. There was nothing around me. I could sort of see some stars, but I didn't know where I was. I had the feeling that I was just incredibly far from home, far from Earth,
Mm.
and just in the middle of nowhere, a place that a human being was never meant to see. Just
Mm-hmm.
all these feelings. It freaked me out. It scared me so bad. I kind of snapped back in my body, and my heart was like, it was pounding so hard, like you could actually see it through my.
Wow.
I have never been that scared in my life. Even with all the sleep paralysis, demonic stuff, that was a
What
scary.
made what made you stop doing it?
Well, what happened was so for a long time I never saw any spirit beings, and then one day I finally did, and I saw a lot of them. One time I was just astral projecting as I did, and
Mm-hmm.
I left the we lived in this little trailer. I left the trailer, and outside I saw something I had never seen before. I saw hundreds of, well, spirits, but they were all different shapes, sizes. They looked different. Some looked human, some looked like monsters. They just all were different, and they were all like walking down my street towards this big white, what looked like a portal. It was like white light, this just big portal that was down the road to the right and like in the middle of that road. And they were
Mm-hmm.
they were all heading towards it. Some of these things were like walking on the rooftops of other trailers and stuff.
Yikes.
They were just all heading into this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know what I had never seen anything like that before. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what it was. I went up to the closest. There was like a group of 6 or 7 of these things,
Mm-hmm.
these beings, closest to me, and I went up to them and I said, "Hey, what is going on?" And to me, it didn't really feel weird. It felt like if you were at a grocery store and you were asking somebody, "Hey, where's the spaghetti sauce?" It didn't really feel that strange to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went up and I asked, what is this? What's going on? And they didn't answer my question, but they were really interested in me, and they started asking me like about myself, and am I from their world, or am I like from the physical world? And so I told them, no, I'm astral projecting right now. And they said, they were like, oh, well, listen, if you ever need help leaving your body, you can ask us, and we'll help you. We'll help you leave your body. We know sometimes it's hard to do that, and so we're happy to help. And there was just something about it. I mean, they seemed pleasant, they seemed
Mhm.
polite. You know,
But it made your skin, did it make your skin crawl for some
there
reason?
there was something inside where there was a hesitation, and
Hmm.
it had to have been my sort of my Christian upbringing.
Sure.
I knew who Jesus was, but at this time I wasn't practicing
Hmm.
Christianity at all. But to me it was too close to praying to something that wasn't God.
Hmm.
And even though I wasn't being a very good Christian at that point, obviously, but there was still something there was like a
Sure.
check in my spirit. And
Hmm.
so I was like, okay, thanks. And I was like, well, I gotta go now. So I left, went back in my body, and the next time that I tried to leave my body, I wasn't able to. I just flat out couldn't do it, which wasn't uncommon. I mean, most of the time that I tried to do it, I couldn't
Do
do
you
it.
think that it purposely was that way because they were trying to get you to like
It,
call
it
upon them,
Yeah,
basically?
it could have been, but really, like I mean, I would try this every night, and 1 out of 10 times I was able to do it. So it wasn't super uncommon that I would just meditate and not be able to do it, but just have just some time of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really think anything about it, but once I was thinking about, all right, do I just want to call it quits for today? I remembered what those things said, and for a second there was I had to think about it, and I ended up deciding, no, I'm not gonna do that. That makes me a little too uncomfortable, and so I didn't. It did not take long. It did not take long. All of a sudden it was like hell opened up in our trailer. Um,
Wow.
like we had always had, like, Christina and I had sleep paralysis times
Mm-hmm.
before, and there was always kind of weird things that happened there, but this was like far beyond anything. I mean, we were getting, in the middle of the day, we were getting demonic manifestations. We were hearing voices. We had an atheist roommate at the time that we didn't tell any of this stuff to. She
Mm-hmm.
was seeing stuff, and like, I mean, like, it was crazy. She was freaked. She was scared. She
Mm.
she would she would she would describe these orbs that she would see, that she would say they're like bright, like glowing orbs, but I get this feeling of just anger and
Fear.
evil and
Mm.
fear, yeah, from them. And I see these things just shoot into your room, and like she would say all this, and it got so bad. And I mean, there were times where we'd hear really loud crashing sounds in the bathroom. I mean, it would sound like a bomb went off. We'd go in there and nothing was moved. There was no
Mm-hmm.
source of sound. And it was just constant. It was every day. And then Christina and I would have shared sleep paralysis experiences,
Oh,
which we never had.
wow.
There were times, and there were never, we hadn't had that happen before this. So
Do
there were
you think
times.
for her was she I know she had an accident. I read in your book The Afterlife. She had an accident that she had some I can't remember if she had I don't think she had an NDE per se, but it affected her, I guess you could say. Do you think that had any bearing on her as well in all of this?
It could have, because after her car accident, she almost died, and
Yeah.
and the reason we included her experience in there, we put it in the scientific evidence, because she was
Hmm.
actually, from her so-called coma, uh, she was able to actually hear what doctors were saying. She was able to
Hmm.
hear, like, her sister talk to her, and she thought that she was talking to her sister back, but her sister, like,
Wow.
wasn't hearing her. So there could have been parts where she was kind of out of the body, but not
Sure.
but not aware of it.
Which is really terrifying to think how many people are in a coma and they think that they're not. And
Yeah.
maybe that's why maybe they're stuck because they
Yep.
actually think they're awake. I mean, I had an accident too when I was in high school. I was in a truck and we were heading out to a party on New Year's Eve and we were following a car. We were doing 70 miles an hour. It was a truck with no back seats and my friend he was driving, I was in the middle, and then I had another friend on the other side. No seat belts. We hit a patch of ice going 70 miles an hour. Truck flipped end over end and rolled. And I'm not, it was, that's my story because that was my encounter. And I know I did because the truck doors were locked. Somehow they both got thrown from the truck, and to this day they do not remember. They just remember getting up. How did they get thrown and not rolled over? Like,
Yeah.
you would think the truck just kept rolling end over end and then just rolling, rolling the regular way. And so they got up. I stayed in it, no seatbelt, but I can tell you, I remember thinking, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm done,
Wow.
And but then I sat there like for some, I'm not kidding, something held me in my seat. Like I closed my eyes, this peace and calm came over me, and I could hear crunching noises all around me because the glass was breaking, the truck noise and all that. But it's like there was just a calm, and when it stopped, I did not have a head injury, a back. I literally got up and walked right out of it. I mean, there's
That's
no
amazing.
way. Yeah, there's no way I should have just got up and walked out of that truck. I mean, you would think I would have at least had massive bruising from being jostled around or neck injuries. How did I get out of that truck with no head injuries? I mean,
Yeah.
so reading this book, The Afterlife, there's a lot of people out there that I think if they really think about it, they've probably had some of these experiences, including Christina and you. And so, like you said, she was talking in her coma, and that obviously had a profound effect on her. So you guys were married. You guys, at this point, you had opened some doors you weren't supposed to. So how did you guys get
Yeah.
back to your faith, and then now we're talking about, all of this stuff that you had piqued your curiosity as a kid that you're now able to do and do it the right way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, during that time, so it was all me. Like Christina wasn't involved in New Age stuff at
Oh,
all.
gotcha. Okay.
She barely tolerated it.
Uh,
She didn't make a big deal about it, but
mhm,
she didn't really like it. We
mhm.
never fought about it or anything, but she would just kind of silently pray for me and stuff, and I didn't know she was doing that until later. There were a couple of times that I tried to kind of get her into it, but I could tell she just wasn't interested, and I'm not the kind of person, I never have been, where I'm going to try to like force somebody to do something.
Sure.
Just so we just didn't really talk about it, but but I would tell her like she knew what I was doing and stuff, and she just kind of was like, okay, she didn't want to like upset me or like insult me or
Mhm.
anything like that. But she didn't want to support it either, so she was kind of put in a really
Mhm.
awkward place. So we started having these shared sleep paralysis experiments or experiences, and excuse me, getting
Mhm.
over a cold.
It's going around.
Yeah,
Hope it's not corona.
yeah, hopefully. So
I mean, if it's corona, you're definitely doomed to death. You have like only like a 98.5% chance of survival or something, I think.
if even that, and those
Right.
estimates are pretty
Right.
liberal.
Right.
But yeah, so at that point, she was describing the same things I was seeing, and I never thought that was even possible, because I thought, well, sleep paralysis, even if it is a demonic attack, it's something that's in somebody's head, and I didn't know how any of it worked, but she was seeing the same things that I was. There were times we would see the same like creature knocking stuff off the shelves, and then we would wake up the next morning and see the stuff all over the floor. And so there was actual
Wow.
evidence that it wasn't in our heads. And
Mhm.
at that point, I realized, all right, I really screwed up, and I don't know what I'm doing. I have no way of stopping this. I have no control in this situation, and this is just my life now, and my wife's life. And we just had our first daughter, our Jacqueline. We just had her, so we had this little baby who was had
Oh,
night terrors and stuff. And which
wow.
which by the way, she never had those before before all hell broke
Mhm.
loose in our trailer. She never had it before, and she never had it since once it stopped. And
Wow.
so it was, these things were attacking her too. And
Mhm.
I just intuitively knew it was because I did not ask them for help. Whatever they
Mhm.
were trying to do with that, whether they were trying to get in my body or whatever they were trying to
Mhm.
do, I refused it, and their plan didn't work, and they were really mad about it, and they were going to let us know, and so they were just constantly attacking us.
Mhm.
And so it got to the point where finally I had decided I got to get out of New Age stuff. I don't know how to do it or what I'm doing, but I got to do it.
Mhm.
And I prayed like a real prayer to God, probably for the first time in my life. prayed to Jesus, repented. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I made a terrible mistake. I'm really sorry. I don't know what any of this is. I do not understand this world that is now invading my life and my family. All I know is I'm not able to take care of my family now, and I need your help, And so shortly after that, I had gotten up. I went to the living room. I was flipping through TV channels, and I happened to see the show called It's Supernatural with Sid Roth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I was watching it, and they had a guest, L.A. Marzulli. And
Oh
I
yeah. Mhm.
never at this point never heard of him. I thought, that's kind of a funny name. I wonder what this guy has to say. And he
Yeah.
was kind of speaking with all this energy and everything, and so it really it captured my interest immediately.
Mhm.
So I started watching it, and just in this one episode of this one show, this guy that I had never heard of before was answering every single question I had as a kid that my church wouldn't
Never thought.
answer. It would make me almost like feel bad about even asking. He was talking about aliens and prophecy and the mark of the beast and these things called the Nephilim, which I never heard of before, the
Mhm.
giants of Genesis 6, and he was piecing all these things together. And I mean, it blew my
Blew your
mind.
mind.
I
Mhm.
mean, I actually TiVo'd it. This is how long ago this was, so I'm dating myself.
T-bowed.
Yeah.
Hey, at least you didn't pop a VCR tape in.
Yeah, exactly. So I TiVo'd it, and then when Christina came home from work, I was like, well, you got to watch this. And so we sat down and watched it, and in that same episode, he was saying that he was coming out of New Age. I mean, or that he came out of New Age already, like years and years ago. What are the chances that I just happened that right after I pray that,
Right.
and I just happened to find somebody who used to be in the same situation I was in, and who had came out of it, and who's also interested in the same things, had the same questions, and found the answers. I mean, the chances of that would be astronomical. So I took that as an answer to prayer. And I told Christina, I think I really need to reach out to this guy.
And and really, honestly, how many people are out there right now? That's what I see weekly. People are leaving the church and going into spiritism. They're going into like the new age stuff. They're going into Wicca and all that. And it's because the church is not doing a good job.
That's
There's a
right.
lot of, especially with the knowledge we have now and the access to information. They're out there and they have a lot more questions than they did back in 1980. So I mean, we're doing a big disservice if the church does not start getting
Yeah.
serious about some of this stuff. We're going to be in real trouble with our kids, and there's people that will probably be held accountable for not doing it, for
Yeah.
not announcing, for not telling them the truth, and at least bringing in people who can explain it if they can't.
Absolutely. And LA was such a big inspiration to me towards that end, because that's exactly what he's doing. Whatever anybody wants to think about him, look, he is out there, and he's at least talking about things that the church
Hmm.
won't talk about. I love the guy. But so here's how that whole thing. I didn't think I had any shot of getting in touch with this guy. I mean, he's
Hmm.
on TV. I used to kind of put everybody on TV like on a pedestal. I
Sure.
used to think like those are the people that you just can't reach. And
Right.
so I always wanted to do stuff with TV and stuff. I kind of thought, I grew up thinking everybody wanted that, and I didn't find out till later on in life that that's not a dream most people have.
Hmm.
And but anyway, so I found his website, ordered some of his DVDs, and I took a chance and emailed him on because he
Hmm.
had his email on the website, and I'm thinking there's no way he's going to write me back. But I was just asking. I kind of told him my situation, and I said I don't know what to do, and I prayed, and I saw
Hmm.
your show, and to me that's an answer of prayer, and I'm sure you get 1,000 of these a day, so if you don't answer, I get it. I totally understand, but if you have
Yeah.
any answers for me. So it was like the next day, his wife Peggy emailed me back and said, LA's on the road right now, but he wanted me to write you back and say that he would like to talk on the phone with you, and
Hmm.
about what you're going through. And I was like, oh, thank God, of course, of course.
Yeah.
And so and it's actually funny. I actually don't know if he knows this yet, but
He's gonna
I
know.
he's gonna know now. I recorded him without his knowledge.
Oh.
Well,
Hey,
because
check the laws before you admit that.
yeah, there's no evidence of it because
Right.
that computer has been destroyed, but by now. But but no, like I was thinking, okay, this is probably the only time I'm ever going to get to talk to this guy. He's going to give me some
Mhm.
good information. I don't want to forget anything, and I don't want to
Yeah.
be writing while I'm trying to
So,
listen. So I actually recorded that conversation.
so you got your tape recorder out.
Yeah, it was actually it was an old PC, and it was an old program called Acid 6, which was like at the time it was like the cutting edge of music recording software.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, so I recorded him through that. I didn't tell him because I didn't know if it would
Yeah.
upset him, and I just didn't know anything about him, and I knew I was never going to post it publicly. So, but anyway. And it was actually funny because that phone call was so impactful. I never listened to the recording again. I didn't have to. I remembered every word.
Wow.
But he talked to me for about 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and he gave me a crash course in spiritual warfare. That's where I learned what I had done. Like he said, uh, and he came at it from a totally non-judgmental because he was in this stuff
Mhm.
too. He came out of it and he's like, well, what you've been doing without realizing it is every time you leave your body, you're basically punching a hole between our world and their world, and you're trespassing.
Wow.
And
And you know what? When in a future communication with you, I would like to address the Hadron Collider because I'm guessing that that's what they're doing. So if people are watching right now, you might want to stay tuned to other episodes because we'll probably talk about that.
yeah,
So
definitely.
go on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's like, and you're trespassing on their territory, so you're giving them legal right, like
Mm,
spiritually legal right to come and do whatever they want in your life. And like I said before, it's like you are fully within your rights to shoot a criminal dead if he breaks into your.
yeah.
It's just a little different over there because you're not useful to them dead. You're more useful to them petrified or deceived or any number of things,
Hmm.
just depending on what that particular evil spirit wants to do at that particular
Sure.
time. So he said, there's power in the name of Jesus, and the good thing is that you've already repented. You're asking Jesus for help, so now you can have access to his authority. And the
Hmm.
way that works is you basically just go through your house and use the name of Jesus to cast these things out. And don't forget, you have to close any portal that you might have opened. You use the name of Jesus for that too. So he said,
Mm,
use your own words because it's, you're the one exercising Jesus's authority. It's not your authority, it's Jesus's, but you're like the vessel. So use your own words.
hmm.
Just something like in the name of Jesus, I command any evil to leave, and I command any portals that have been opened that I've opened to close, and not, this is a house of God now. He said, pray for a hedge of protection around your property. He said you can even get some oil, like just regular olive oil, pray over it and put it on doorposts if you
Hmm.
want. He said, but the main thing was the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
So I did
And
that. Yeah.
so did your experiences stop at that point?
uh, like 90%. Well, the what I deem is all hell breaking loose in the trailer, that all stopped completely. Like that completely stopped the day that I did it. And it was weird. The day that I did it, I didn't notice anything really out of the ordinary while I was doing it.
Hmm.
But after it was done, there was a peace in the house and I felt sick to my stomach. I actually had to call into work.
Really?
I felt so weak and sick, and it was like I
Mm.
felt in my body like I had just been through a battle, even though I didn't really notice it while it was going
Mhm.
on. To me, I was just walking around the house saying in the name of Jesus. But when it was done, I was so exhausted and sick, and like I felt drained. But
Wow.
because there was a real battle going on, and I just didn't really notice it at the time. But so yeah, I had to call into work. The next day I was fine though. But yeah, there was a piece over the trailer.
Mhm.
It all stopped, all of that. Now I say 90% of it stopped in full because we still do live in a fallen world, and these things still do exist in the world.
Sure.
And so there are times where you're gonna run up against a demon or
I've had, I mean, people are listening to this probably like, these are people are insane, but wait till you have it. I'm probably one of the most logical people you'd ever meet. And obviously, clearly you are too. You are a big researcher in science and, but the same people that are saying that are usually the ones that are like, hey, ghost adventures are on. Let's go, dude. Let's go watch them, So it's like, okay, it's all fun and games until it happens to you. I've definitely had I have a bound journal that I write if I have significant dreams in. I've had dreams that have come true, like literally I've written them very, very specific, but that was more, I mean, those are more like from God, not, but
Yeah, yeah.
I've definitely had some stuff that's happened. And, I have family members who have, I mean, people know, like, I mean, like hauntings in their, things in their house that happen that are very real. And one of them is was an atheist. They've definitely upgraded to an agnostic now, I think, because of the experiences they've had. So,
Yeah, that'll
but
do it.
it's funny because this whole talk took a whole different turn. I'm glad that we started off this way and gave that intro because I'm sure there's somebody out there that knows somebody who might be like, oh, hey, well, maybe this is what's going on with you,
Yeah.
and this is how you get out of it. So clearly, this message was probably for somebody. So
Well, and
what I
and
want,
just to just put a cap on
sure,
that too.
yeah,
After all that happened, that was when I realized there is actual real power in Jesus' name, and I saw real power. At that point I was, because that happened, I saw the New Age as just this kind of frivolous, really weak kind of thing.
right,
Where if you've never seen it before and then you see some stuff in New Age, it's going to be really impressive. But once you
hmm
see the power of Christ, oh my gosh! I mean that was like, okay, I am absolutely like renouncing New
yeah,
Age. I got rid of all my my New Age CDs and DVDs, and I got rid of everything in my house. And I wrote LA back, and I told him, I thanked him, and I said, it completely worked, and that was what inspired me to do what I'm doing now. Like that was when I was like, all right, there is real power in the name of Christ.
and
I want to be like LA. I want to, I want
mhm,
to, because he was such an inspiration to me, and I want to do conferences and write books, and I want to help get the word out
sure.
there. And ever since then, that's what I've been doing. He and I work closely together on something. We do conferences and stuff
Mhm.
together, so we've kept in contact, and we're good friends. And I still
And
consider
that's
him a mentor and stuff. And
And
so
of
yeah,
course, like a lot of people, you make mistakes, but I
oh sure,
mean, God will take that. And like, what obviously evil meant for bad, God took it and he made it for good because now you have been there. So you know what that's like and you can help somebody else. And what I want to do real quick is I want to
sure,
take a quick break and
okay,
then we'll go on and talk about the rest of your book because I'm sure there's people out there that need the break because everybody's jumpy and can't watch long videos. So hang
sounds
on
good.
there, everybody. And then if you're watching this, part two will be up shortly. So hang on just one second here, Josh.